who owe it to middle-class families to make sure that those student loans don't increase. Everything else is increasing. Let's not increase the interest rate on student loans, and I thank the gentleman.
You're welcome. And I think when you're looking at a state like Ohio, and like many states, like Maryland, like Pennsylvania, where you're retooling your economy. So you've got to grow scientists, engineers, people involved in technology and math, and you've got to grow that field so that we can generate the new generation of jobs necessary. And you've also got to educate the workforce. So no more high school diplomas, not even a year, but get into these apprenticeship programs that the unions have, get into the community college. So we start lifting up. If we want to do advanced manufacturing, if we want to sell products globally to the world in wind and solar and the new renewables or whatever the case may be, batteries, whatever, those workers on the factory floor have to have skills that they're not going to get in high school. And this is all part of that program. So I want to thank the gentlelady for taking the time to do this special order, and look forward to continuing to support her and the Democrats as we try to bring some sanity to this place. And I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. And, yet again, here we are. We're talking about a situation where since January, the President and congressional Democrats, since January of this year, have been urging Republicans to please act so that we don't see an increase in student loan interest from 3.4%, a doubling, to 6.8%. And here we are in April, and April is a time when many families, the young people have received their notifications that they've been accepted into college. They've received maybe notification of a scholarship opportunity. They also know that their families may have to dig into their savings, or they'll have to get a job. And then they begin to think, too, about applying for and receiving that student loan so that it puts together the full package of what's needed to go to college. Those are the decisions that here in April, families all across this country are making. And they're making those decisions not knowing whether this Congress is going to fail to act that would result in an increase in a doubling of student loan interest that would cost students not just the $23,000 in debt that they're likely to graduate college holding on to and needing to repay, but an additional $11,000 over the course of that loan, over the history of that loan and the repayment. I think it's really shameful. And I know that there are some in this country who didn't have to worry about how to pay for college. I know that there are some in this country who didn't have to wake up and know that they had to get into a work-study program or do like I did, wait tables in addition to going to class, in addition to receiving loans, in addition to receiving scholarships to pay to go to school. But that's the exception in this country. It's not the rule. The overwhelming majority of students across this country who go to college, who want to do better because their parents want them to do better than they did, have to do a combination of things in order to afford college, whether it's a four-year institution or community college and getting those skills to put you into the workforce, or an apprenticeship program. This is the situation that our students and their families are facing. And with that, I'd like to yield time to my good friend from Rhode Island, Mr. Cicilline.
I thank the gentlelady from Maryland for coordinating this conversation this evening, and say how important it is for me and for the residents of my state, the state of Rhode Island, that we address this issue in a responsible way. Rhode Island is, of course, the home of the great Senator Claiborne Pell, after whom the Pell Grants were named for his great work in ensuring that there was access to affordable higher education. And there was a recent report that was done that said from the year of 2008 to 2018, it's estimated that there will be 47 million job openings created. And more than 30 million of these jobs will require at least some level of post-secondary education. So this is really about thinking about our future, the economy of our country, and our ability to meet the demands of the new economy of the 21st century. And it's an economic imperative for families that they have the ability to access higher education and to do it in an affordable way. In my state, this is particularly important where we have very high unemployment. Young adults in 2010, young adults from the ages from 16 to 24, there's an unemployment rate in Rhode Island of nearly 27%, and in 2011 at 22% for that same age group. That's between 16,000 and 17,000 young adults without the ability to find work in those 2 years. And this is a very important issue. I have talked to so many of my constituents, both students and families who are worried about their ability to continue to access education, that are making decisions as they're getting their letters in the mail about where they're going to go to school and thinking about what those costs will be. And what is incredibly disappointing is what we saw today in this chamber. We've seen this movie before. We saw it during the extension of the payroll tax cut. We saw it in the transportation bill. This idea of a very urgent need that we have to address, working in a bipartisan way, and at the very final hours, some poison pill is thrown into the bill that is obstructing progress on this issue. And today it was women's health and children's health and cutting $12 billion or nearly $12 billion from an important wellness and prevention fund to do this. Look, we have got to do this for the sake of young people in this country who are in school, who have school loans, who are thinking about new opportunities. We have got to prevent this increase in interest rates. It's important to families who are struggling in a really difficult economy, but it's also important to the future of our country. We have got to be in a position to ensure the best talent has the ability to access education in this country. And, you know, there are so many young people who, without school loans, will never have the opportunity to pursue higher education and to pursue their dream or to make a life for themselves and their family. And we have a responsibility to be sure that we keep these rates low as we possibly can, so that young people and families are not having to struggle with this additional burden at a time when we want to be encouraging as many young people as possible to be pursuing higher education and the opportunities and careers that come with it. I come from a state that understands that investing in education is critical to families and critical to economic opportunity. Education still is the best tool to bring people from poverty into the middle class and beyond, and we have got to make sure it's available to every single American. And I'm very disappointed today that the measure was undertaken in the way that it was, and the President has already indicated an intention to veto this proposal. Or there are other proposals that we have in this House. I'm a co-sponsor that will do this in a responsible way, that have bipartisan support in the Senate. We have got to do this for the sake of young people in this country, and we owe it to families to ensure that this rate does not double on July 1st. I thank the gentlelady for her leadership on this, and I am proud to continue to be part of this important fight for the sake of the future of our young people and for the sake of the future of our country. And I thank the gentlelady for yielding.
I thank the gentleman from Rhode Island, and just want to point out to him, as I've pointed out to others of my colleagues here, and thank you so much for your eloquence, not just about what those loans mean to individual families, but what they mean as an economic imperative for the 21st century. And as Democrats, we recognize that. I mean, I would note that in the great state of Rhode Island, we have an opportunity for 43,000 students in your state, Mr. Cicilline, to make sure that students aren't facing an additional $34 million in increase because of what might happen on July 1st. As Republicans and as Democrats, we can do something about this. We don't have to get to a point where we're saying to students for the future that we really don't care about you. We don't care about the fact that we helped you do and be all that you can through high school, but now we're going to dump you when it comes to going to college. And so I thank the gentleman for his leadership. You know, up until today, the Republican majority has simply refused to acknowledge that this hike would affect millions of students and families, 7 million students across this country. And perhaps today, after a reversal by the assumed Republican presidential nominee, we voted on a bill that would finally address the issue. But it's so sad that they did that at the expense of health care for working families. And no one understands that more than the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia. My friend and my neighbor, I'd like to take a moment to recognize her and her leadership. And if I recall, she taught at a law school and understands those students who really struggle to get through and make sure they're doing what they need to do academically, but that they're able to pay for a quality education. And I'd like to recognize the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton.
I want to thank my very good friend from Maryland, Congresswoman Edwards. It's so typical of her to come to the floor on an urgent issue like this. And I have to chuckle because when you say about my having been a tenured professor of law at Georgetown, this is the gentleman from Rhode Island. He was one of my students. And the gentleman from Detroit was another. So it makes me feel pretty ancient, but it makes me feel very good also to see that young people got to come to the Congress while I was still here. And, you know, I can't imagine what the gentleman from Rhode Island went through because I never experienced it, but he probably had college loans coming out of college. Don't even let me talk about going to Georgetown Law School. Very good law school, but one of the most expensive in the country. As a matter of fact, I'm still a tenured professor of law at Georgetown because under the rules of the House you can teach and still be a member, and so I teach one course there every year. I'm coming to the end of the school year, go over every other Monday just to keep my brain intact. Sometimes this is a place that gets your brain out of order, and it's certainly out of order when it comes to student loans. The notion that we have to come to the floor today to plead for students during a Great Recession, when these young people get out of school, they are not likely to get a job. The very least you would think this Congress could do effortlessly would be to say, look, you had to take loans, you have to pay interest. We know that means that you're going to be delayed years from doing what all of us did, which was to get to buy a house pretty early in our careers. These students will not have the credit to buy a house. First of all, they'll have to pay off their loans. They can't liquidate them in bankruptcy. No, we don't let you do that, like other debts. And now they face the possibility of a doubling of their interest right after Democrats, when we were in power, adjusted those interest rates. What a cruel hoax, particularly since we're just coming out of a recovery. College students are now beginning to get jobs for the first time. They're leftover bunches who started out their careers without any jobs and faced with humongous loans. I don't know how people go to graduate school like my good friend from Rhode Island. Of course, if you go to certain kinds of graduate school, then there are stipends for people in graduate education, even though that doesn't take care of their undergraduate loans. But if you go to law school or medical school, you're really on your own. Those are professional schools. And you're going with a huge amount of debt. In my own district, which, remember, is only one city, the borrowers in this year were 60,000, almost 65,000. And if the interest rates increased, it will bring them to something over $13 billion. I don't even want to tell my constituents that. They're depending upon me to do something about it. And here on the floor we meet nonsense about how you're going to pay for it. Are you going to pay for it by stripping from health care for women, children, for your parents, in order to keep your interest rates from going up? Are you going to pay for it by leaving alone big oil in order to keep your interest rates from going off? Our values are way off kilter when we can't have reached a solution by now that we're this close to drop dead day, and that's what it will mean for many students. They won't be able to believe it, and we haven't come to an understanding first that we'll raise it. We've got to the president had to go all around the country making it clear that this issue was on the front burner, because it certainly wasn't there until he did so. And now people come forward. For example, Mr. Romney said, oh, he's for making sure these rates don't go up. Does he have an idea about how to make sure they don't go up? Why doesn't he tell our colleagues here in the House how to make sure they don't go up, so that they don't hurt one group of citizens in order to help another group of citizens? So we come to the floor today, gentlelady from Maryland, gentleman from Rhode Island, because we don't intend to let this issue go until we in fact find a way to pay for the loans we have told the young people to take. We told them, go to college, yeah, you have a little debt, go to college and you are made. We've already broken that promise, because they come out of college now and they don't have the workforce opportunities that we ourselves had. Let's not break another promise, the promise that they will not be stuck with a debt which is much greater than the debt they already pay. The debt they already pay will delay their coming to the same kind of amenities that their parents have become used to. Yes, they're going home to live with their parents, because if you got this student debt, you're hardly able to go out and rent an apartment in Washington or in Maryland or Rhode Island. Yes, they're going home. And if we want to make sure that they're able to strike out on their own, the one thing we don't want to do is to burden them with a greater debt than they already have, and they have on the average a $25,000 debt. I cannot imagine, even when I got out of school, you know, that was sometime in the 18th century, I cannot imagine what I would have done with a $25,000 debt. Even in real terms today, that's a lot of money, friends. If we care at all about our kids, we will find a way that does not rob Peter to pay Paul in order to relieve them of this debt. And I thank the gentlelady for yielding me time.
I want to thank the gentlewoman and especially for her leadership. As you were speaking, I was doing a little calculating. I went to undergraduate school at Wake Forest University, had academic scholarships and some student loans, and I also waited tables in order to pay for my expenses. Had I not been able to get those student loans, with only the combination of academic scholarships and waiting tables, I would not have been able to afford to go to school. I came out with student loan debt from undergraduate school, and then I worked for a time, saved a bit, and went to law school. But even out of law school, I still couldn't pay all of my living expenses and all of my tuition without also taking out student loans. When I finished law school, the combination of my loans from undergraduate school and my loans from law school totaled about $75,000 plus. And over the period of time that I paid that back, I paid back a total of about $100,000 because of the combination of interest rate over the period of time. I paid my last student loan payment almost 1 month to the day that I was elected in my primary election coming into Congress. And my parents, my mother raised, 6 children. We knew almost from the time that we could speak a word that we would go to college. My father was in the United States Air Force, served for nearly 30 years. We lived all over the country and around the world. They worked really hard, but with 6 children on a military income and retirement, they knew that they wouldn't be able to fully pay out of savings, what savings with all those mouths to feed, in order to go to college. But they wanted their children to go to college. They wanted their children to have the kind of opportunity for the future that they did not have for themselves. My story, though it happened some time ago, is the story of American families today, whose young people are preparing to graduate from high school. They're preparing for high school graduations over these next couple of months, and they want to go to college. And many of those students right now, today, having received those April notices of college admissions and financial aid determinations, know that through some combination of savings and loans and Pell Grants and work study, that they will put together the puzzle pieces of a college education so that they can afford it. Parents and students all across the country are making this decision. For those students who are coming out of high school in this season, July 1st is our deadline. July 1st is our deadline to ensure that interest rates will not double from 3.4% to 6.8%, because by August 1st and late in August, those students will have to pack their trunks and their bags in order to go away to college. And we owe them the commitment to know what their obligation is going to be for the repayment of those student loans, and to know that they will not be faced with a doubling of interest rates over the course of their period of time in college. And let's think what this means to them. What it means is that we're saying to our students, we want you to study engineering and science and math and technology. We want you to come out and to be out of school and to be teachers and to be inventors and innovators and entrepreneurs. But we are unwilling to make sure that you're able to do that because you get the tools that you need for success. And one of those things for some students, for many students, for 7 million students across this country, is the ability to get a student loan that's affordable and to have some sense that over the period of time that you're in college and you graduate college and the economy is better and you get a job, that you will be able to repay that loan so that some other generation of students can also go to school and do the same things. And so why am I passionate about this? I'm passionate about it because it's my story and it's the story of middle-class families all across this country who know that they want to do better, who struggle to do better, and who experience the rug being ripped out from under them because we want to ask our middle-class families to either double your interest rates or sacrifice your health care. Those are the choices we're asking our middle-class families to make. And in today's economy, there's not a greater predictor of individual success than a good education. This is a fact. But if it's a fact, then we need to make the investment that makes that fact a reality for our students across this country. Right now, as many have pointed out on this floor, the unemployment rate for Americans with a college degree or more is about half of the national average. That means that when you graduate, even if you have student loans that are affordable and can be repaid, you have some opportunity to do that because you will have done better and you will have the opportunity to do better than the student who only gets a high school education. The incomes for those who graduate from college are twice as high as those who don't have a high school diploma. Higher education, whether we're talking about a 4-year institution or a 2-year institution at a community college, is the clearest path that we have to middle-class success. If we are going to build a ladder of opportunity for the American people, then one of those rungs has to be student loans, and another rung is a Pell Grant, another rung is job training, another rung is to make sure that our families are eating and that our children are immunized. There are many rungs, and this Congress has an obligation to make sure that those rungs of that ladder are available to the American people. Democrats and Republicans both say they want to build a competitive workforce. But really, let's be clear. It's the Democrats, my colleagues here in the Congress, who time and time again actually stand up for the students with the skills that it will need to comprise that competitive workforce. And so I look at the things that Democrats have done over this period of time. We've increased the maximum Pell Grant from $4,050 in 2006 to $5,550 in 2010. We created the American Opportunity Tax Credit that provides a maximum of $2,500 in a tuition tax credit to eligible families and students. We created income-based repayment to ensure that graduates can manage their loan repayments during stressful economic times. I remember when I came out of undergraduate school and I really wanted to work, and law school really wanted to work in the public interest sector, and I did. But I wasn't paid as much as some of my colleagues who were going into law firms and other kinds of practice. Would that I could have paid my student loans back based on my income. Well, that's the kind of opportunity that we've provided for students for the future. We provided loan forgiveness for graduates who actually go into public interest careers, who go into teaching careers after 10 years of loan payments. And we've required schools to have an online calculator so that students and families can estimate their costs based on their family's financial situation. We've supported historically black colleges and universities and other minority-serving institutions. This is the way that Democrats have supported middle-class families and poor families in their ability to achieve the American dream. And I would only ask my colleagues that on the Republican side of the aisle, we do the same. And with that, we have about 5 minutes left to continue our conversation with the American people, and so I'll yield just a moment to the Congresswoman from the District of Columbia.
I want to thank my friend from Maryland. I wanted to add to her list because, importantly, when our party, the Democrats, took control, the interest rates were where they will go in July. They were at 6.8%. We felt the pain, and we insisted and lowered those rates to their present 3.4, whatever it is now. But the way they were phased in, they would go up again in 6.8. You see what we were trying to do in 2007. We recognized this is a major issue and took those down, which I'm sure encouraged many people to go to school in the first place. Now we have young people having an unemployment rate of about 14%. If you're between 20 and 24. It's terrible when you consider that nationally it's about 8%. I am very distressed that already there is an almost 15% delinquency rate in student loans, and that's just going to add to the interest rates you were talking about. And the interest rates that we're trying to keep at least leveled. So I want to thank you again for leading this special order so that America knows before it's too late.
I thank the gentlewoman, and now I'd like to recognize just for a moment the gentleman from Rhode Island.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. Just a moment. I want to say that the gentlelady from the District of Columbia is right. Georgetown Law School is very expensive. I, too, had student loans to go to law school, worked 2 jobs also as a waiter to do that, and I didn't know anybody who was in law school with me that wasn't there with some loan. I didn't know anyone that I met that either they or their parents wrote a check for the tuition. And so that's the experience of millions and millions of families all across this country. And I was listening to the gentlelady recount all of the work that the Democrats have done in investing in education. And it's because we realize it's not about us, it's about the future of our country. These are investments in young people who are going to be the leaders of this country. And access to education is so central to the American dream. And I really just want to conclude by thanking the gentlelady for leading this conversation. I hope It will help really be a call to action from young people all across this country. On Tuesday, I'm having a call to action in my district, encouraging young people to demand that Congress do the responsible thing, prevent this rise in interest rates, but also continue to make the investments we need to make in education for their sake and for our sake. And I yield back and thank the gentlelady for the time.
I thank the gentleman, and I thank all of our participants today in calling attention to the fact that Democrats have proposed ending tax subsidies so that we can, for oil and gas companies, so that we can use those savings and actually help to pay for need-based college loans where they are and to help pay down the deficit. Republicans are cutting taxes for the wealthiest Americans, and they're throwing that debt onto students and families. And to be clear, this is not a partisan issue. It's a student issue. It's a family issue. It's an American issue. It's about our competitiveness in the economy. And I want to call all young people across this nation of all political persuasions to reach out to their members of Congress and say, stop the increase on student loans from doubling from 3.4% to 6.8%, costing thousands of dollars, millions of dollars to students across this country. And with that, I yield the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back her time. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gohmert, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always an honor to be able to speak here in the House of Representatives. It has been a good day because here in the House, despite what some may think, we voted overwhelmingly to leave student loan rates at the same rate they are right now, 3.4%. If the government had had to subsidize a rate, if interest rates were higher, it would be more difficult to justify because of how much overspending this administration has had, as dictated during the time when Speaker Pelosi and Harry Reid had full control over all the spending. But while the President was very busy running around the country condemning Republicans for not caring about student loan rates and the plight of students, we were busy here at work making sure that student loan rates did not increase. And while the President was out there telling students that Republicans don't care about you, that they're going to double your interest rates of your student loans, he didn't bother to come check and find out what was happening in Washington. Because if he had, he would have found out we felt the same way about the student loans. And let's see which Democrats were as concerned as we were today about the student loan rates going up. This was Bill H.R. 4628, and it basically, it's 2 pages, not 2,800 pages, it's 2 pages, keeps the rates at the same rate so they won't go up. So we can see, one of our clerks just brought the printout of the Democrats that voted with the Republicans to extend the current interest rates, and there are 13 Democrats who voted with Republicans to keep the interest rates where they are. And all that's on the printout are the last names: Barrow, Bishop of New York; Boren from Oklahoma; Donnelly, Higgins, Hochul, Kissel, Lipinski, Matheson, McIntyre, Owens, Peterson, and Waltz. Those are the Democrats that voted today with Republicans to keep the student loan interest rates the same. So, Mr. Speaker, it's my great hope that while the president's run around the country condemning Republicans for not caring about the plight of students who have to pay student loans, and about the fact that he says Republicans are going to double the student interest rate, I hope that somebody who's not out campaigning like the president as he flies around at government expense, I hope somebody down Pennsylvania Avenue, right down the street that way, will get something into the president's teleprompter that advises him, hey, you may want to back off of that. The Republicans, with only 13 Democrats voting with them, actually voted to extend the same interest rates. Now, I feel like the Democrats would agree with the fact that we believe that in order to keep from having expenses continue to go out of sight as they did during the 2 years that Congress was completely controlled by the Democrats and they had the White House, they did whatever they want, they passed a rule, pay as you go. And actually, I broke ranks and voted with them. Others told me they don't really mean this pay-as-you-go thing. Yes, they're going to pass it, but they don't mean it. I'm going, but I do believe in pay-as-you-go. I do believe things should be paid for. And I found out from those who had been here longer than I had that they were right in their cynicism, because over and over, big bills that our friends across the aisle brought when they were in control of things, they would make an exception. So this bill and that bill and this bill and that bill weren't paid for, so the pay-as-you-go didn't mean much. But some of us believe that when we create a law, we ought to either abide by the law or change it. So this needed to be covered. And in looking for ways to come up with funds to cover these current interest rates, some of us were reminded of the fact that Obamacare, that most of the country didn't want, most of the country begged Congress under Speaker Pelosi and Harry Reid not to pass, and that Americans, even in Massachusetts and other places normally controlled by Democrats, expressed their will by electing Democrats, this time elected Republicans so they could stop Obamacare. And it took a procedural twist that was quite unseemly in order to get it passed, but the American people didn't want it. And I realized that since President Obama sees Obamacare as his defining issue, his biggest issue, that he would not ever sign a bill that repealed Obamacare in its entirety. I can get that. I understand that. I respect that. But it seemed to some of us that surely, as the President in every speech talks about being financially responsible, surely he would see that we shouldn't spend the $105 billion implementing Obamacare until we find out if it's constitutional. Because to use $105 billion to implement a bill, actually a takeover of people's rights, to implement that, only to have it struck down, would mean we had wasted tens of billions of dollars. So my thought was surely President Obama would be willing to meet us at that point. Sure, he won't agree to a complete repeal, but let's just suspend the spending until we find out whether the Supreme Court says it's constitutional or not. How could you be against that? Well, he was, because as the bill was shoved down the throats of Americans, it became very evident that they didn't care what Americans thought. Don't really care what the Supreme Court thinks. Apparently, many don't even know what the Supreme Court thinks or says, because the President himself said it would just be such a fundamental change from what the Supreme Court ever done before. So obviously he was not aware of recent cases like Marbury versus Madison. I think that was around 1803. Not all schools have copies of those newer cases like that. But anyway, it's not fundamentally different from what the Supreme Court has done in the past. What's fundamentally different is to have a Congress push through a bill like Obamacare that's about one thing, the GRE, the government running everything, with a majority, a big majority of Americans saying, please don't do this. So it was done. So in looking for ways to pay for this bill today, it seemed to many of us that a good and appropriate course would be to say, let's take some of that money, a tiny bit of that money from Obamacare that many of us think will be struck down, that shouldn't be spent till we find out if it's going to be struck down, and let's use that to pay for the $6 billion for this program. Made sense to some of us, but as I've already read, there were 13 Democrats that stood up and said, okay, we can go along with that. Let's wait and see if Obamacare is struck down or not before we spend any more of that money on Obamacare. And in the meantime, we will use it to pay for the student loan rates that we're out there blasting Republicans for not caring about. This was a way to be bipartisan, and 13 Democrats were bipartisan, and we appreciate them reaching across the aisle to pass this bill with us with a big majority. The President, on the other hand, apparently did get word that despite all his rhetoric that we don't care about the student loan rates on our side of the aisle, we don't care about students, so he runs around the country condemning us. Somebody at the White House got some word because there was the issue of a veto threat if we pass this bill that keeps student interest rates where they are. Now, when I first heard that we were going to potentially pass a student loan bill that would affect interest rates, I considered that I may have to vote present because my wife and I have student loans for our children that we are paying back. Well, it turns out this bill will not help me one bit. My interest rates are still way above this. My children's and my wife's and our student loan that we took out for our children, they're way above this. This doesn't affect our loans that we have, and therefore I was able to vote for this bill to help those students that are getting loans in the present. And the reason I felt compelled, my wife and I felt compelled to start taking out student loans and to take responsibility for paying those loans was because before I ever ran for office as a judge, my wife and I had set aside money in accounts that would pay for our kids' college when they got there, would increase in value. By the time they got ready for college, the money would be there to pay for it. But when we believed it was a calling for me to run for judge, badly needed a new judge. We knew it would be a big hit financially. And just as when I ran for Congress, we had to really feel compelled that this was the course for our lives. And once we felt that, we cashed out every asset except our home, our retirement accounts, everything. Now, a little scarier to some than others. I knew I could make a lot more money because I did before. I made a number of times more in the private sector. A couple of years before I started running, practice was going good. I didn't want my children to have to be encumbered with massive college debt for one reason, because I felt called to be a public servant. So we've taken on those student loans. So it doesn't go over too well with a person like me who has sacrificed all our assets except our home to come be a part of Congress and to try to get things on track. It doesn't make me feel too pleasant when people say, I don't care about students and student loans and their rates. We get it. We understand. We want students to do well, but more than that, we want them to have a vibrant economy and a job waiting for them when they get out of college. And it should be an exciting time of renaissance, an economic boom in America, except for this president. If he would simply get out of the way. We have found that we can be energy independent. And we don't have to send billions and billions of dollars, 42 cents out of every dollar of which we're borrowing. We don't have to send all that money to the Solyndras and all the cronies of this administration. We could just get out of the way and allow the market to work and collect the revenue that comes pouring in from the income tax, from the businesses, including the oil companies and the independent oil and gas companies, as they start producing more of our own energy. It should be a new day in America. It should be time of renaissance here. And instead, people are struggling to figure out how much food can I afford for my family when I'm paying $70 and $80 to fill up my gas tank when it shouldn't be more than $40. Because this administration has given every indication by its actions, not its words, but by its actions, that it will do nothing to help us become energy independent. We talk about, gee, natural gas from this administration, natural gas can really help out. I'm for all of the above. Well, apparently that means the president's for all of the above up in the sky somewhere, because he's doing everything he can to keep us from drilling and producing the energy we've got. We should be thanking God every day for blessing this country with more energy than any country in the world. And people like the Chinese are wondering, what is going on with these people? They got more energy than anybody in the world. We're having to run to South America and Africa and other places to buy their energy because we just don't have enough. They've got all they could ever need, but they're putting it off limits and won't produce it. Kind of strange to thinking people that we're not utilizing the blessings that are found in this country. Well, it's time we started. And if we do that, the students will have jobs, and they can pay them back more quickly. We do care, and this bill today shows that. Now, I want to take up another topic right quickly here, something called the United States Post Office. Now, there are some who think we ought to just get the government out of the post office business altogether. And normally I'm a guy that believes if a private entity can do a better job than the government, then let's let the private entity do it. But there's a problem here. It's called the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 8. The Congress shall have power to, and you go through the listed empowerments, establish post offices and post roads. And if you go through our history, you find out that actually they were quite concerned about the king being able to prevent them from sending newspapers and news and messages around that could inform people of what was really going on. They thought it was so important that there be a government post office, and I do too. But we can't be stupid about the way it's running, and we have people in management positions in the United States Post Office who have been worse than stupid. incompetent doesn't begin to touch what some in management of the U.S. Post Office have been doing. It's as if they want to kill it off. Now, there are a lot of issues, but I think the biggest issue is in the middle and upper management of the Post Office. Because I've seen on more than one occasion an announcement by the United States Post Office that we are going to close this post office, we're going to close this facility, and that was followed with a statement that, and therefore we are going to pay for an independent study to show that we should close these facilities. Well, duh. You go pay somebody to do a study to justify the decision you've already made, you got no business being in a management position, because you're not using the facts and information at hand to make your decisions. You make your decisions willy-nilly regardless of what the facts dictate should occur. And we got a good indication of that recently in East Texas. We got a map sent out by these brilliant managers of the U.S. Post Office explaining a decision they had made. And I'm going to get this up here because it's important that the management that sent this out understands how silly, how ridiculously incompetent they are. Now, they were making a decision with regard to a postal processing facility near Tyler, Texas. Tyler, Texas is located in Smith County. Now, in Texas, though, we do have a Tyler County, and in Tyler County you found towns like Woodville, Chester, Warren, places like that. But you don't find Tyler, Texas, or the Tyler, Texas processing facility in Tyler County. It's in Smith County. Yet we had a determination by the management of the U.S. Post Office that it would be more effective to shut down the Tyler processing facility. And they sent out this map to show this. This is an exact enlargement of the map the U.S. Postal Management sent out to justify their closing a processing facility near Tyler, Texas. In the center of this circle is Tyler County. It's not near Tyler, Texas. It's not near the processing facility. Now, you might say, well, surely they went out and talked to the people at the processing facility, looked to see if there were decisions that could be made to make it more efficient, more economically viable, those kind of things. And the answer would clearly be, how can they go out and talk to them when they don't even know where Tyler, Texas is? They think it's in Tyler County. We got some morons. Maybe they're just incompetent. Who knows? But when we look to see, okay, how is the post office adjusting, we figure, well, as any business would know, you don't want to hurt the retail business. You don't want to make it more difficult for people to use the retail end of your business. That would be the local post offices. So what have these mental giants done? They've said, we're going to close lots of post offices and make it much more difficult for you to use our services. And not only that, we're going to close processing facilities that make the mail move many times more quickly, more efficiently, save tremendous amounts of gasoline because we do the processing close to where it occurs. They're talking about closing a processing facility in Lufkin. I'm sure they don't know where that one is either. But when you look at what they've done, it makes no sense. Now, this is the map they sent out with Tyler County as the center. This tells you, here down here is Tyler County, here up here is Tyler, Texas. They're not even close. They don't cover the same areas. And yet they were using information down here about Tyler County to justify closing a facility up here, and surely they found their error, but they don't care because they're in middle management. What difference does it make? They're not accountable. They don't have to show a profit. They don't have to show efficiency. So what do? Here's part of what's going on with the post office. Well, times are tough, so let's create more senior management staff. How about that? Percent management change from 97 to 2012 up 41.25%. Wow, that's some smart folks. Gee, we need more retail. We need people using our services more. Let's close retail facilities, make it more difficult to use them. Let's get some more senior management in there, and gee, that will make a lot of difference. We've gone up 1,006% on inspector generals, and local management losses have been rather dramatic. That's not the way to become more efficient. Not only that, they could take a clue from what America is doing. Used to be that you pulled into a service station and you got service. Now you pull into a service station, the only service is what you get out of the car and do yourself. And I prefer to do that anyway. I've worked in service stations and I actually enjoyed it. So I don't want anybody else pumping my gas. And when I finish and the thing clicks off, I raise the hose up and I get every bit of the gas that I've got in that hose. Well, let's look at the routes. Right now, if you mail a letter in Tyler, Texas, to go to Lufkin, Texas, it'll travel 84 miles. You mail one from Tyler to Palestine, and it is Palestine in East Texas, total 47 miles. You mail a letter to Tyler to Longview, it's 38 miles. Under the new plan, that's certainly not going to save any gasoline, our brilliant postal management will have, you mail a letter to Tyler that's going to Longview, the 38 miles, now it will go to Dallas area, then over to Shreveport, then back to Longview. We're not going to process it here. We're going to go from 38 miles to 389 miles to deliver a letter. If you're going to send a letter down here, let's see, can't tell where that is. Looks like down 35, so maybe that's to Waco or Austin. So you want to send it there? Oh, I see. You want to mail a letter from Tyler to Palestine instead of 50-something miles. It will go Tyler to Dallas, down here to Austin, then back to Palestine. You want to mail a letter the short distance to Lufkin? Well, we're going to make it go 10 times further. We're going to go to Dallas, then clear down, I guess that's to Houston, and then back up to Lufkin. We're going to go about 10 times as far to deliver a letter as we did before. This is nuts. What we've seen in America is, as times got tough, service stations say, you know what, we're going to let you do your own pumping. That'll help us save and be more efficient. And as time's gone on, they say, you know what, let's put other services in this gas station. So you see banks, you see other things. And in some post offices, they were beginning to do that, have agreements with the state. Let's let the state lease or pay us to do some of the state services here. Let's allow them to come in and get passports here. And there were some people that were thinking right. You combine other services, this post office will be the center of the community. It'll be efficient, it'll be local, it'll bring people to our retail outlet, and they'll have more people using our services at the post office. Not the way these mental giants figure it. Oh no, we're going to close post offices, we're going to close processing facilities and make it cost a tremendous amount more. We're going to make these decisions, and then we're going to go out and we're going to hire people to do a study to come to the conclusion we tell them, all in the name of making the post office more efficient. That is nuts. It's time to clean out the management of the United States Post Office. I've dealt with postal employees all my adult life. Those are hard-working folks, people that deliver the mail, people that stand there behind the counter, take abuse all day, lines getting longer because we're not replacing the people when they leave. They're good people. They're hard-working people. There's some issues with pensions. We can deal with those. But for heaven's sake, it's time to get rid of top-heavy management, making ridiculous decisions, and we can improve our lot here. One other thing. Last night I was on a telephone town hall with Rusty Humphreys and a lot of Tea Party folks, and a question was asked. They slipped in a ringer in there, Democrat, who had said, gee, you know, you say you're a Christian, how could you vote to take money away from helping seniors with their health care, and how could you help the major oil companies by giving money to them? Quickly, let me just say, a subsidy is a gift or grant of money. Look it up. No oil company is getting a gift or grant of money. They're getting deductions. And if you forget what the President said, he said he's going after major oil, declaring war on them. Ridiculous. We have in the President's jobs bill exactly what he's doing. He's eliminating the deductions that will bankrupt the independent oil and gas companies in America. Won't affect the major oil companies. He says he's declaring war on the major oil, on big evil oil, but the truth is he's going to bankrupt the independent oil and gas producers that produce and drill, maintain 95% of the wells in America. So what will be the effect of this President's so-called war on major oil? It'll put the independents out of business. 95% of the wells will not be drilled and maintained, and that will mean more profit than any time in the history of the world for the major oil companies. It's time to get that under control. And to the gentleman that we got cut off with last night because we were out of time, let me just say, son, dumb, dependent, and Democrat is no way to go through life. I yield back.
The chair will remind members to direct their remarks to the chair.